The Middle East has a rich and long history. Indeed, the very first civilization was born in the region. No country, though, would have as much as an impact on the region than that of Iran, or at the time more commonly known as Persia. Empires would rise and fall, with the Persians reaching their territorial peak during the ancient times. This is the history of ancient Iran. Iran first properly came into prominence during the Bronze Age, where its first city-state, Susa, popped into existence. This city was largely influenced by the nearby Sumerians, who had cultivated the land and began to build huge urban centres. Susa became the capital of the region known as Elam, inhabited by the Elamites. The Elamites would be a constant thorn in the sides of the Sumerians. This was until the Achaemenid began a conquest of the known world and quickly brought Elam into their folds. In 646 BC, Elam was pretty much wiped off the face of the earth by the bloodthirsty Assyrians. The harsh treatment of all Iranians under the Assyrians eventually led to them uniting under the leadership of the Medes. The Medes allied with the Babylonians and defeated the Assyrian yoke, carving a huge empire for themselves in the process. One of the factions that was swallowed up by the huge Median Empire was the tiny state of Persia. A Median king tried to assassinate the Persian prince, Cyrus, fearing he was going to usurp him. Cyrus rallied all of Persia and most of the Median generals to his cause, defeating the Medians and forming his own empire called the Achaemenid or Persian Empire. After many years of conflict, the Persian Empire now expanded from its homeland in Iran to the borders of India and Anatolia. Cyrus would die, leaving his empire to his sons, who would later conquer Egypt. Following the death of Cyrus's sons, their relative, Darius, usurped the throne for himself. During this time, the Greeks of Ionia in modern-day Turkey rose up in rebellion. Helped by the Greeks from the mainland, these Greeks stormed the capital of the region and burnt it to the ground. This resulted in Darius and his son waging an ongoing war against the Greeks, each time being beaten back and forced back to their former borders. The war against the Greeks would come back to bite the Persians when in 334 BC, a Macedonian king called Alexander the Great led a Greek coalition army into the very heartland of Persia. After the climactic battle of Gaugamela, Persia and all of her holdings fell under the rule of the Greeks. Following Alexander's death, Persia would change hands many times, before eventually being conquered by the Seleucids, who founded the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucid Empire brought many aspects of Greek culture to the area, notably making the native Persians second-class citizens, with all the high-ranking positions being occupied by the Greeks. Naturally, this classism didn't go down all that well with the natives of the empire. This eventually resulted in the nomadic Iranian tribe, the Parthians, chipping away at the empire before finally driving the Seleucids out of Iran and the east. The remaining Seleucid holdings were taken over by the growing power of Rome. The two neighbouring empires of Parthia and Rome almost immediately went to war. War was kick-started by the richest man in Rome, Crassus, who invaded Parthia in 53 BC, only to be surrounded and slaughtered by Parthian horse archers. This was the beginning of one of the longest wars in history, with the Roman and Iranian empires duking it out for nearly 682 years. The Parthians kept many of the social structures brought into the area by the Greeks, which made them somewhat unpopular with other native Iranian tribes. Much like the Median Empire before them, the Parthians would be overthrown by another Persian tribe, this time called the Sassanids. The Sassanids rose up and defeated the weakening Parthian Empire in 224 AD, and almost immediately became the new rival to Rome. The two powers would duke it out for years. During this time, many Christians would flee persecution from the Roman Empire into the Sassanid Empire. This backfired, as decades later it was the dominant religion in the Roman Empire, who were the Sassanids' sworn enemy. This resulted in a bloody persecution of the Christians in the Sassanid Empire, who viewed them as sympathetic to the Roman cause. Despite this bloody period of Iranian history, the time was a golden age for Persian culture, where arts, science, and literature flourished. Just as the Sassanids seemed to be gaining the upper hand over the Romans, their rule would come to a dramatic end when suddenly, out of nowhere, a single people managed to unify nearby Arabia. Just as suddenly as they had conquered Arabia, they were now marching towards the Sassanids. Desperate for help, the Sassanids allied with their former enemies, the Romans, to beat back this powerful Arabian horde, to little success. The Arabians would finish their conquest of Iran in 654 AD, bringing with them their new religion, Islam, in the process. The fall of the Sassanid Empire marks the end of the ancient period in the east and the beginning of the medieval times in the region. Thank you for watching and listening to our videos. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed. All sources are listed and linked in the description below. I've been the Ancient History Guy, and as always, I'll be seeing you later.